Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we are going to do something a little different. We're tackling a text that, and I'll be honest, it made me do a double take within like the first paragraph.
I can believe it.
Usually when we grab a source about spirituality, we expect it to be about, well, religion, right?
Of course. That's the standard assumption.
We think of God and religion as two sides of the same coin. You can't really have one without the other.
It's the cultural default.
Right. But the source material we are covering today, this text called Evidence of God 3840, it just takes a sledgehammer to that entire idea.
It really does.
It argues that religion and God are two completely different things. And here, this is where it gets really interesting. The author claims that science, not religion, is actually the closest path to the divine.
It is a very provocative stance. This text is essentially a philosophical, almost theological treatise that tries to reframe how we look at human progress. And it isn't just throwing out hot takes for the sake of it. The author is building a very specific, very internal logic about why civilizations rise, why they fall, and, why our definitions of holy might be completely backwards.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack this controversial worldview. We're going to look at the author's hierarchy of world religions, which is, frankly, brutal to some major faiths.
Brutal is a good word for it.
And their incredibly strict definition of what a scientist actually is, and this theory about the great awe that supposedly threatens humanity.
And just a quick reminder for you listening, we're exploring the arguments presented in the specific source material. These are the author's views.
Right.
And some of them are quite radical, so our job is to trace the logic, understand the definitions, and just see how this whole worldview holds together.
Okay, so buckle up. Let's start with this ranking system.
The hierarchy.
Yeah. The author doesn't just say, all religions are valid. They actually categorize them.
They do.
How does the source even define a religion to begin with? Because usually that covers everything from, lighting a candle to running a megachurch.
Well, the definition here is very, very specific, and that specificity is where all the exclusions start.
Okay.
The source defines religion as a mental and psychological activity designed to know, worship, and follow God.
Mental and psychological activity.
That's the key phrase. It's fundamentally about the internal state of the believer, not the external stuff.
Okay, so it's about that internal connection. If that's the case, wouldn't most world religions qualify?
You'd think so. But using that definition, the author immediately starts disqualifying things based on what they call administrative interference. They argue that, strictly speaking, only Christianity and Buddhism count as true religions in this specific framework.
Wait, only those two? That leaves out billions of people. What about Islam? What about Catholicism?
And this is where the author distinguishes between faith and administration. The source argues that while Islam and Catholicism are obviously religions in the broad sense, historically, they've involved too much administrative interference in secular affairs.
So running governments and things like that.
Exactly. In the author's view, once a religion gets too involved in running a government or managing worldly society or acting like a political entity, it stops being a pure religion.
So because they have a heavy administrative structure or a history of political governance, they get downgraded.
They get downgraded. The text argues that the moment the structure becomes more about managing people rather than connecting to the divine, it loses its purity.
Wow.
And it goes further. The source looks at Eastern philosophies like Taoism and Confucianism and dismisses them as religions entirely.
Ouch. I mean, Confucianism has shaped East Asia for millennia. Why dismiss it?
The argument is that Confucianism is a social philosophy, a brilliant one for sure, a great way to organize a polite, functioning society. But the author argues it lacks a concrete theory of God. It's about the horizontal relationship between people, not the vertical relationship with the divine.
And Taoism.
Taoism focuses on harmony between heaven and man, which sounds spiritual, but the author claims it lacks that clear theological center, a theory of God.
I see.
Shinto is described as just a mixture of Buddhism and Taoism without its own independent system. So in this hierarchy, they're treated as philosophies or social activities, not true vehicles for knowing God.
It's some very, very rigorous gatekeeping of the word religion. I noticed the author also touches on Jehovah's Witnesses. The tone there seemed kind of conflicted.
It's a fascinating section because it shows the author isn't just blanket hating everything. On one hand, there's immense respect for Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
They call them wise and kind and explicitly state that if everyone on earth joined them, the world would be a paradise.
That's incredibly high praise. They even praise their magazines, Awake and The Watchtower.
They do. Full of wisdom, they say.
Yeah.
But then comes the but.
The logical trap.
The logical trap. The author uses an anecdote to show that even the groups they admire most have these logical dead ends. So the author recounted a conversation with a Jehovah's Witness teacher where they asked a very specific question. Are Adam and Eve the ancestors of all humans?
Okay, pretty standard biblical question.
The teacher says yes. Then the author asks, are they also the ancestors of black people?
Oh, I see where this is going. It's a biology trap.
It is. It forces a dilemma. If the answer is yes, it implies that over time, white ancestors produce black descendants, or vice versa, which is...
It's evolution.
It implies significant evolutionary change, something the group generally rejects. But if the answer is no, then Adam and Eve aren't the ancestors of everyone, which contradicts the Bible.
So there's no right answer within their framework.
Exactly. And the author uses this not to mock them, but to show that even the most wise and kind faiths eventually hit a wall where their dogma contradicts logic or science.
It's like the author is testing every faith against this strict logical framework and finding them all lacking in some way.
Which brings us to Buddhism. Even though it made the true religion tier, the author has a major bone to pick with modern Buddhist teachings, specifically about mercy.
Yes, the misguided mercy argument. The author critiques these prominent Buddhist figures who teach that you shouldn't kill anything.
Right, the mosquito example. I actually laughed at this part because it's so specific.
It is.
The author mentions a teacher who says, if a mosquito bites you, unless it's on your face where it might look bad, you should just let it eat its fill.
And the cockroaches in the kitchen, don't drive them out.
Yeah, the author finds this absurd and, frankly, dangerous.
They argue that this isn't true mercy, it's foolishness. And they use a very practical, almost scientific counter-argument.
The ecological argument.
The ecological argument. The author points out that if equality of life means never killing anything, well, human life becomes impossible.
Right.
If you have a wound and you put medicine on it, you are killing millions of bacteria. Are you supposed to just let the wound rot to save the bacteria? That's a fair point. You can't be a pacifist to a staph infection.
You can't. Or farming, you have to kill weeds. Walking, you're stepping on microorganisms. The author's stance is that mercy has to be principled.
What does that mean, principled?
It has to be based on non-interference.
Right.
If a mosquito's in a pond, fine, leave it alone. But if it comes to bite you, it has crossed a line.
So it's self-defense, almost.
In a way. The author explicitly sides with the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, from Journey to the West.
Sun Wukong beating the white bone demon. That is such a vivid image.
It is. The idea that evil or harmful forces must be stopped, not tolerated. The author argues that true civilization isn't about letting cockroaches take over your kitchen. It's about maintaining order and health. It's a very pragmatic view of spirituality.
So if all these religions have flaws, administrative bloat, logical traps, misguided mercy, what does the author think the future holds?
The concept is Wan Jiao Yi, or all religions return to one.
Does that mean everyone converts to one giant megachurch or something?
It's actually the complete opposite. The prediction is that religions, as we know them, institutions with clergy, rituals, temples, fixed scriptures, all of that will just vanish.
Really?
The author believes these things are actually shackles on human nature. The great unification they describe is a future where humanity have a direct reverence for the one God, without any of the middlemen.
No priests, no monks.
No complex ceremonies, just a direct, liberated connection.
It's a very Protestant idea, just taken to its absolute extreme. No structure at all, just relationship. But this brings us to the other side of the coin. If religion implies ignorance or shackles in this text, what implies civilization?
This is the core maxim of the whole source. Religion walks with ignorance, science walks with civilization.
Okay, let's unpack this definition of civilization, because usually when we hear that word, we think of cities, armies, technology. But the author uses a banana peel test.
Yes, the banana peel test. The author defines civilization not by technology, but by voluntary behavior based on a correct understanding of the world.
Okay, so how does the banana peel fit into that?
The analogy is simple. You're on a bus, you eat a banana.
Okay.
Scenario A. You throw the peel out the window. That's uncivilized. You kept your little area clean, but you made the world dirty.
Right.
Scenario B. You kick it under the seat. Slightly better, but still selfish. Scenario C. You hold onto that sticky peel until you get off the bus and find a trash can. That, right there, is civilized.
It's about what you do when no one is forcing you to do it.
Exactly. They also use the newspaper stand example. Imagine a pile of newspapers with a coin box and no seller. A civilized person takes one paper, pays the right amount. An uncivilized person steals it or takes the cleanest bill from the change box. The author's point is that civilization is an internal moral code that functions without supervision.
It's fascinating that the author ties this moral behavior so directly to science, because I think a lot of people listening might say, wait, science gave us the atomic bomb, science gave us pollution. How is science the hero of civilization?
The author totally anticipates that objection. They call it the double-edged sword fallacy. You hear this all the time. Science is a double-edged sword. The author absolutely hates this phrase.
Why? I mean, it seems like a reasonable observation.
Because they argue science is neutral. It's just a tool. And to blame science for a murder committed with a weapon is, in the author's words, like blaming the murderer, then blaming the murderer's parents for having him, then their parents.
And on and on.
And eventually you have to blame God for creating the universe in the first place.
The blame logic chain.
Right. If you follow the logic that the creator, the tool, is responsible for the crime, then God is guilty of everything, and the only solution is to destroy the universe.
Which is absurd.
Since that's absurd, the author argues we have to accept that science is innocent, the user is responsible.
That is a fierce defense of science. And that brings us to the gatekeeping. The author protects the word science just as fiercely as they police the word religion. I was actually surprised by who didn't make the cut as a scientist.
Oh yeah, it is an incredibly elite club. The source defines a scientist as someone who discovers a universally effective law and can describe it clearly in text.
Okay, let's test this. Thomas Edison, the guy who gave us the light bulb.
Not a scientist.
Yeah.
He's an inventor. He used existing laws to make a product.
Okay. My university physics professor, PhD, understands quantum mechanics better than I ever will.
Not a scientist. According to this text, he's an educator. He's explaining theories that others discovered.
What about the engineers who built the atomic bomb using Einstein's theories?
Just engineers and workers.
So who actually qualifies?
Newton, Einstein, Curie, Planck, the people who reveal the fundamental code of the universe.
Wow.
And this is the theological twist. The author concludes that these scientists are the closest beings to God.
Closer than the Pope? Closer than a monk who prays 12 hours a day?
According to this text, yes. Because God created the laws of the universe. Those laws are God's language. Scientists are the ones uncovering and translating those laws. Therefore, doing science is, in a way, reading the mind of God.
So, religion walks with ignorance because it relies on mystery and superstition.
Whereas science sheds light on God's actual work.
Exactly. That is a fascinating inversion of the typical science versus religion debate. Usually science is seen as the enemy of faith, but here it's the ultimate act of worship. But the text moves from this definition of science to a much broader theory about history. We've got the hierarchy of religion, the definition of science, and now the rise and fall of civilizations.
This is where the author tries to synthesize the two. The argument is basically this. A civilization rises through science and technology. That's the engine.
Okay.
But it survives through faith.
It needs both.
It needs both, but for different things. Science provides the power. God provides the sustainability.
I see.
The author warns about the danger of hubris. When a civilization becomes scientifically advanced, it starts to feel powerful. It starts to feel like it is God.
We are the masters of the universe.
Exactly. And the text claims this arrogance is the precursor to destruction.
What examples does the source give for this?
They point to Israel, arguing it survived millennia of hardship solely because of the Bible. They point to China, sustained by the concept of harmony between heaven and man.
And what else?
And, perhaps most controversially, they point to the USA.
Let me guess, the dollar bill.
The dollar bill. The author specifically cites the motto, "In God we trust." The argument is that American power isn't just about aircraft carriers or economics. It's rooted in that foundational admission that there is something higher than the state. The source warns that if the U.S. shifts to trusting in itself rather than God, it will decline.
It's interesting how the author ties geopolitical power directly to spiritual submission. It's almost a transactional view of theology.
It is. Submit to God and your civilization endures. And the alternative is what the author calls Da Wei,
Da Wei.
or The Great Awe.
The Great Awe. That sounds like a horror movie title. What is it?
It refers to uncontrollable, overwhelming forces. Think of the Great Flood in the Bible, or a comet strike, or massive environmental collapse. The author argues that when humanity loses reverence, becomes arrogant, great awe arrives to humble us.
And this ties back to the critique of religion we talked about earlier.
It does.
The author says praying to lesser gods won't help when the great awe comes.
Right. The text is very dismissive of worshiping what it calls Shen, or deities, or Buddhas in the face of these catastrophes. The author asks, if temples get destroyed in earthquakes, if monks get persecuted in wars, how can those deities save you if they couldn't even save their own houses of worship?
That's a harsh pragmatism. Your God couldn't save his own temple, so he can't save you.
It reinforces the author's main point. Only the supreme creator, the God behind the laws of science, is the true authority. Everything else is just a middleman that will fail you in a crisis.
There's a specific prediction in the text, too, isn't there? A date.
Yes, 2013. The text explicitly states that from 2013 onward, humanity entered a critical phase.
And what's the claim?
The claim is that we must place service to God first to enter a brilliant era. If we don't, we face the great awe.
Well, we're well past 2013 now. And looking at the state of the world, climate change, pandemics, global tension, you could argue the great awe is knocking on the door.
The author would likely say that just validates their theory, that our reliance on technology without the corresponding humility and reverence is leading exactly where they predicted it would.
So, to summarize this whole worldview, we have a future where organized religion dissolves. Science is elevated as a holy pursuit of discovering God's laws.
Right.
And civilization itself is a balancing act, using science to build, but using faith to keep from destroying ourselves with that very same power.
That is the core of it. It's a call for a scientific monotheism, if you will.
Yeah.
It rejects the rituals and the bureaucracy of traditional religion, but it also rejects the atheism that so often comes with modern science. It wants a synthesis.
It's definitely a unique take. I keep thinking back to that banana peel test. It's such a small thing, but it's a powerful image.
It is.
We live in a world of high-tech surveillance, social credit scores, constant online monitoring. But the author says true civilization is what happens when no one is watching.
And that connects to their definition of the scientist, right? A scientist seeks the truth of the universe, which is true whether anyone sees it or not. Gravity works whether you believe in it or not.
And a civilized person does the right thing whether they're praised for it or not.
Exactly.
So here is the question for you listening today. We've talked about great awe and the fall of nations, but let's bring it down to the sidewalk. If civilization is defined not by our smartphones or our skyscrapers, but by the banana peel test, how civilized is the world we're living in right now?
And maybe more importantly, if the great awe is the consequence of arrogance, are we as a species becoming more humble as we advance or less?
Something to think about the next time you're on a bus with a snack wrapper in your hand. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.